They pushed her. 3 sets of hands, laughing, wine-flushed, cruel in the way only friends could be cruel, shoved Alessia forward, and her feet betrayed her, carrying her stumbling out of the shadows and onto the polished stone floor of the great hall. The music swelled. Every torch in the iron sconces seemed to lean toward her, and the man standing at the center of the floor, the one every living soul in the Northern Territories knew by the weight of his silence alone, turned his head. Alpha King Valdrin Ashgrieve had not danced in 7 years. Everyone knew this. It was not a preference. It was a fact of nature, like winter or death. The king did not dance. The king did not smile. The king stood at the edge of every gathering like a shadow carved from granite, watching his court with eyes the color of ash and frost, and no one was foolish enough to approach him uninvited. Alessia's hands were shaking. She could feel the laughter behind her, could hear Madden's breathless whisper, "Go, go, it'll be hilarious." And she understood with perfect, sinking clarity that she had been chosen for this humiliation precisely because she was the one who could afford it least. A healer's apprentice, daughter of no one, barely tolerated in the fortress at all, and only because old Revna needed someone to grind the yarrow and wash the bandages. She was not supposed to be at this feast. She was not supposed to be on this floor, and she was certainly not supposed to be standing 3 paces from the most dangerous wolf alive, with her hand half extended and her heart slamming against her ribs like a trapped bird. She almost turned. Almost. But then he looked at her. Not through her, not past her, not with the distant glacial dismissal she had seen him aim at lords and warriors and daughters of noble bloodlines. He looked at her the way a man looks at something he has been searching for in the dark. His wolf went still. She saw it happen, the flicker behind his eyes, the sudden tension that locked his shoulders, the way his breath stopped. Just stopped. As though his lungs had forgotten their purpose. And then, impossibly, catastrophically, in full view of every alpha, beta, and ranked wolf in the Northern Territories, Valdrin Ashgrieve reached out and took her hand. His fingers closed around hers, not politely, not gently, the way a drowning man grips the edge of a boat. The music had shifted, something slower, something old, something the string players seemed to pull from memory rather than notation. His other hand found the curve of her waist. She felt the heat of his palm through the thin fabric of her dress, and something inside her, something buried so deep she had no name for it, lurched awake. "I don't know the steps," she whispered. "Then follow mine." His voice was low, not a command, a lifeline. She followed. 1 turn, 2. The hall had gone quiet in a way that had nothing to do with the music. She could feel the weight of every gaze, could hear the whispers spreading like fire through dry grass. She told herself she would pull away after the next measure, make some excuse, laugh it off, survive the aftermath. But his hand did not loosen, and the music did not stop. Couple after couple drifted to the edges of the floor. The space around them widened as though the court itself was stepping back to watch something it did not understand. His eyes never left her face, not once. Not when Lord Greymane murmured something sharp to his beater, not when the Dowager Lady Sathara rose from her carved seat with an expression that could have curdled wine. 3 songs. The musicians played 3 songs without pause, as though they too understood that stopping the music would mean stopping whatever fragile, impossible thing was happening on that floor. The final note trembled in the air, died. Silence. His hand was still on her waist. His fingers were still laced through hers, and his eyes, those frost-colored, impossible eyes, were burning. "Tell me your name," he said. She swallowed. Alessia. Who brought you here tonight, Alessia? I came with the healer's household. I prepare medicines. Something flickered across his face. Pain, or something near it. A healer, he said, as though the word meant something different to him than it did to her. An apprentice, barely. And do you know what just happened? She shook her head. He released her waist, but he did not release her hand. His thumb traced a slow line across her knuckles, and the touch sent a tremor through her that had nothing to do with cold. Neither do I, he said quietly. And that terrifies me. The court erupted, not into applause, into chaos. Whispers became arguments, arguments became demands. Lady Sethera's voice cut through the noise like a blade. This is an insult to every bloodline in the Northern Territories. And within the hour, the great hall had divided into factions. Those who had seen what they'd seen and understood its meaning, and those who refused to. The Alpha King had touched an Omega-ranked healer's apprentice, had held her for 3 songs, had looked at her as though she were the first warm thing he'd encountered in 7 frozen years. And he had not let go. They gave her a room, not the servants' quarters where she'd been sleeping on a straw pallet beside the drying racks, a real room with a hearth and furs and a door that locked from the inside. Cale, the king's beta, had arranged it personally. He said nothing as he handed her the key, but the look he gave her carried the weight of a man who had been watching his alpha die by inches for 7 years and had just seen the bleeding stop. Alessia sat on the edge of the bed and pressed her hands together to stop them trembling. She was not stupid. She knew what a mate bond was. She had heard the stories, the recognition, the pull, the wolf's certainty that preceded the mind's understanding. She also knew what happened to women who were claimed by men far above their station. The stories did not end well. The stories ended with challenges, with poison, with bodies found at the base of cliffs. A knock. Not a guard's knock. Too quiet, too careful. She opened the door. He filled the frame. Still in the formal black of the feast, though the collar was loosened now, and she could see the edge of something beneath. A scar, thick and silver, running from his collarbone down beneath the fabric. It pulsed with faint frost, thin as spider silk, like something alive and feeding. You should not be here, she said. No. Lady Sethera will. Lady Sethera, he said, and the words carried the weight of someone who had stopped caring about consequences approximately 3 hours ago, is not the alpha of these lands. And the alpha of these lands is standing outside a healer's apprentice's door at midnight. That will not help either of us. A pause. The ghost of something that might, in a different man, have been a smile. May I come in? No. He looked at her, really looked, and she watched something shift behind his expression. Not anger. Surprise. The genuine, disarmed surprise of a man who could not remember the last time someone had told him no. You're not afraid of me, he said. I'm terrified of you. But I've learned that showing fear doesn't make the danger smaller. It just makes you a more appealing target. The silence that followed was thick enough to breathe. Who taught you that? He asked, and his voice had dropped to something raw. Something scraped clean of title and authority. Everyone I've ever known. He looked at her for a long time. Then he stepped back from the door. Lock it, he said, and know that there is not a wolf in this fortress who will touch you. Not tonight. Not ever. I will tear this castle stone from stone before I allow it. He left. She locked the door. And then she pressed her back against the wood and slid to the floor, because her legs would no longer hold her. The frost appeared the next morning. Not outside. The autumn was mild, the forests still gold and rust. The frost crept across the walls of the king's chambers, across his skin. She saw it when old Revna sent her to deliver a tincture for his sleeplessness, the way his hands trembled, the way his breath came in clouds, even though the hearth was roaring, the way the ink on his maps had frozen mid-word. "How long has this been happening?" she asked, setting the bottle on his desk with steady hands. He did not look up. "Leave it." "How long?" A muscle in his jaw tightened. He turned a page with fingers that crackled faintly, frost fracturing along the knuckles. 7 years. The number landed like a stone in still water. 7 years since the last lunar. 7 years since the curse. "Your wolf is freezing," she said. It was not a question. She could see it, the pallor beneath his skin, the frost that gathered in the creases of his knuckles, the way he held himself perfectly, brutally still, as though movement might shatter something inside him that could never be reassembled. "You overstep, apprentice." "I am a healer. Overstepping is the only step that matters when someone is dying." He looked at her then. The frost on his lashes caught the firelight and fractured it into small, cold stars. "My wolf has been dying since the night Vadi cursed me and walked into the northern wilds," he said, as though the words had been stored so long they had calcified, and speaking them aloud was a kind of excavation. "She was not my true mate. She was a political match, arranged by my father before his death. When she discovered this, she went to the Bone Witches. She paid with her own life. And the price she set for mine was simple." He paused. The frost on his knuckles thickened, spread to his wrists. "I would freeze from the inside. Slowly. My wolf first, then my body. By the 10th year there would be nothing left. No warmth, no feeling, no heartbeat. Just a throne with a corpse sitting on it, ruling a kingdom that could not tell the difference." Alessia stared at him. "And you told no one?" "I told my beta. Kale knows. The healer Revna suspects." He met her eyes. Something cracked in his composure. A fissure, thin but deep, running through the mask he wore like armor. "And now you know. So I will ask you what I have not asked anyone in 7 years. Why are you not running?" "Because you don't need another person who runs." The words landed somewhere beneath his defenses. She saw it, the way his expression flickered, the way his frozen hands stilled on the map, the way something behind his ribs, not pain, not quite, but the ghost of a sensation he had forgotten the name for, made him draw a sharp breath. "When you took my hand last night," he said, very quietly, "the frost receded. For the first time in 7 years, I felt warm." The air between them changed. She felt it, a shift in pressure, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the sky turns copper and the wind dies. "That's why you wouldn't let go," she whispered. "That is why I will never let go. Whether you permit it or not, Alessia, my wolf has chosen, and I am running out of time." Lady Sethera struck first. She waited 3 days, long enough for the court to simmer, long enough for whispers to curdle into suspicion, long enough for Alessia to begin learning the corridors and earning cautious nods from the kitchen staff and the younger guards. Then, during the morning assembly, with every ranked wolf present and the great hall packed to the gallery rails, she rose and invoked the right of inquiry. "This woman," Sethera said, her voice carrying the practiced precision of someone who had been dismantling rivals since before Alessia was born, "has no bloodline, no rank, no pack affiliation of record. She was not presented at any choosing. She was not vetted by the Council of Elders. And yet she occupies quarters in the royal wing and commands the king's attention as though she were, forgive me, a person of consequence. Alessia stood in the center of the hall. She did not look at Waldron on his throne. She did not need to. She could feel his wolf, feel the rage vibrating through the bond like a wire about to snap. "I am a healer's apprentice," she said. "I do not command the kings anything." And yet, Sathara smiled, stepping closer, the torchlight carving her features into something predatory. "You wear a gown provided by his household. You eat at a table set by his steward. You walk halls that women of 10 generations' noble blood were denied. What, precisely, is it about you that merits such extraordinary generosity? What skills does a yarrow grinder possess that the court does not?" Laughter. Scattered. Careful, but laughter. Alessia felt it land. She had been laughed at before, in the village, in the healer's cottage, by the very girls who'd pushed her onto the dance floor 3 nights ago. She knew how to wear it, how to let it slide across her skin like rain on stone. "I possess no skills that merit your concern, Lady Sethra, but I notice you've spent 3 days investigating a yarrow grinder's background. What, precisely, is it about me that frightens you?" The silence that followed was surgical. Sethra's eyes narrowed to slits. Her wolf pressed against the surface. Alessia could see it, the faint luminescence behind the older woman's pupils, the way her posture shifted from courtly to something more fundamental and dangerous. "You will regret that, girl. Deeply." If you're enjoying this story and want more like it, take a moment to hit that like button. It tells me exactly what kind of tales to bring you next. 2 nights later, Alessia woke to the sound of someone in her chamber. Not Waldron, not a guard. A woman she did not recognize. Slender, hooded, moving with the deliberate precision of someone who had been given very specific instructions. The woman's hand was reaching for the water pitcher beside Alessia's bed. "Don't." Cale's voice, low and lethal, came from the shadows behind the door. The hooded woman froze. In Cale's hand was a small glass vial, its contents already tested, already identified. He held it up so the moonlight from the narrow window caught the oily residue. "Night, Spain," he said, calmly. "Enough to stop a wolf's heart in minutes. Odorless, once dissolved in water." His eyes found the woman's. "Tell me, did Lady Sethra instruct you to watch her die, or simply to confirm it afterward?" The woman bolted. Cale let her go. He already knew where she would run, and 2 of his most trusted guards were waiting at the corridor's end. He had suspected Sethra from the moment of the inquiry, and had posted a rotation outside Alessia's chamber without telling the king, because telling the king would have resulted in Sethra's immediate death, and Cale was a man who preferred evidence to spectacle. Alessia sat in her bed with her hands wrapped around her knees and understood, with absolute clarity, that Lady Sethara did not intend for her to leave this fortress alive. She went to Waldron, not to his throne room, not to his study, to the battlements, where he stood in the pre-dawn darkness, staring out at the frozen tree line with frost crawling up the stone beneath his bare feet, unable to sleep because the cold no longer permitted it. "She tried to poison me," Alessia said. His hands gripped the parapet. Ice spread from his fingers, racing across the stone in jagged veins. His eyes, when he turned, were not grey. They were white, fully white, the wolf surging to the surface, and his voice, when it came, was not entirely human. "I will end her." "No. She tried to kill you. And if you destroy her now, before the court, before witnesses, before proof is laid bare in daylight, you become the tyrant they already whisper about. You become the cursed king who slaughtered a noble lady over a servant girl." Alessia's voice was steady, her hands were not. "We do this properly, or we do not do it at all." He stared at her. The white in his eyes flickered, receded. The frost on the parapet slowed its advance. "You should be afraid," he said. "You should be furious. You should be demanding I send you back to the village where it is safe." "There is no safe. There never was. The only difference between here and the village is that here someone actually cares whether I survive the night." Something broke in him. She saw it. Not a collapse, not weakness, but the kind of breaking that happens when a wall has been held up too long and the arms holding it finally admit they are tired. He reached for her. His hand, half frozen, trembling, cupped the side of her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone. The frost on his fingers stung, but she did not flinch. She leaned into it, into him, into the impossible weight of a king who could tear apart armies but could not stop the ice consuming his own heart. "You are the most infuriating woman I have ever met," he breathed. His forehead dropped to hers. She could feel the cold radiating from his skin, could hear the low rumble in his chest that was not quite human. The space between them was nothing. The tension was everything. "Good," she whispered. "Infuriating women are very difficult to kill." The sound he made was not quite a laugh, but it was close. Closer than anything she had heard from him in the days she'd known him. And then the curse struck. Not gradually, not the slow creep of frost across knuckles and window panes. This time, it detonated. A wave of cold so absolute that it drove Alessia backward and turned Vaudrin's breath to crystals in the air. Ice erupted across his chest, spreading from the scar beneath his collarbone, racing outward like cracks in shattered glass. His wolf surged. She could see the shift trying to take him, his bones cracking, his jaw elongating, claws bursting from fingertips that were already encased in ice. He collapsed against the parapet. "Vaudrin." "Stay back." The words came through teeth that were lengthening, through a throat that was closing around frost. "The closer you are, the more the bond strengthens, the harder it fights. It knows. The curse knows I'm feeling again. It knows I want to live." She understood then. The curse was not merely a timer counting down to death. It was a predator. It fed on hope. Every moment of warmth he felt, every touch, every conversation, every time his heart beat faster in her presence, gave it fuel. The curse had been designed to ensure that love itself would be the instrument of his destruction. Vari had been thorough in her hatred. Alessia knelt beside him on the frozen stone. The cold bit into her knees, burned through the fabric of her dress. She could feel the curse through the bond, a black and howling thing, a dead woman's rage preserved in ice and magic and fed by 7 years of patient, relentless hunger. "Then let it fight," she said. "I am not leaving." His eyes found hers through the frost. White, terrified, dying. "Alessia, please." "You held my hand on that dance floor when you could have walked away. Now I am holding yours." She took his frozen hands. The cold hit her like a wall of black water. It flooded up her arms, into her chest, wrapped around her lungs and squeezed. She heard the curse, heard it as though it were alive, a sound like cracking glaciers and howling wind, and a woman's voice screaming from a place beyond death. "He is mine." He was always mine. He will die in the cold and the dark, and no warmth will ever reach him again. Alessia held on. The frost climbed her wrists, her forearms. She felt her skin go numb, felt the cold burrow past muscle and into bone. Her vision blurred. She felt her knees buckle, but she did not let go. She pressed her forehead against his frozen hands, and she thought of warmth. Not an idea of it, the specific, lived memory of warmth. The healer's kitchen on a winter morning, steam rising from a clay cup, the smell of dried lavender and burning oak, the way sunlight fell through a cracked shutter and turned everything gold. the weight of old Revna's hand on her shoulder, saying, "You'll do, girl, you'll do just fine." The sound of rain on a thatched roof, small warmths, real ones, the kind that accumulate in a life lived without power or prestige, but with something far more honest than either. She pushed that warmth through her hands and into his. The curse screamed. It fought. Frost erupted across the battlements, across the courtyard below, shattering the glass in 3 tower windows and sending guardsmen stumbling. The cold intensified. Her fingers went white, then blue, then a color beyond description. She could feel the curse clawing at her, trying to freeze the bond itself, trying to turn the connection between them into another cage. Her hands were burning. The cold had crossed into agony, into something beyond temperature, into the pure distilled pain of a curse that did not want to die. She held on. She held on because no one had ever held on for her. She held on until the screaming stopped. She held on until the frost cracked, not reformed, but cracked, fractured, fell from his skin in shards that melted before they touched the ground. She held on until she felt his fingers, warm, impossibly warm, close around hers and squeeze. And then she heard it, a heartbeat. Not hers, his. Steady and strong and alive, alive, alive in a way it had not been for 7 years. She felt it through their joined hands, felt it sink with her own, felt the mate bond snap fully into place with a force that drove the air from her lungs and brought tears to her eyes and made the wolf inside her, the one she hadn't known existed, the one that had been sleeping her entire life waiting for this moment, raise its head and howl. He was gasping, gasping like a man who had broken the surface of black water after 7 years beneath it, who had forgotten what air tasted like, what warmth felt like, what it meant to be alive. Color flooded his skin. The frost receded from the stones around them. The pre-dawn sky lightened as though even the darkness was pulling back. His hands came up, unfrozen, trembling, warm, and cupped her face. Alessia. His voice cracked on her name. Just her name. Nothing else. As though it contained everything he had ever wanted to say and never had the warmth to speak. She was crying. She hadn't realized it until she felt his thumb trace the path of a tear across her cheek. "You impossible woman," he whispered. "You stubborn, reckless, impossible woman. You were dying. And you walked into the cold and held on. Someone had to." He kissed her. Not carefully, not with the restrained precision of a king performing an act of state. He kissed her the way fire kisses kindling, desperate, consuming, total. His hands in her hair, her fingers gripping the fabric of his shirt, the mate bond singing between them like a struck bell, resonant and irreversible. When he pulled back, his eyes were no longer frost-colored. They were the warm grey of hearthstones, of smoke rising from a chimney on a winter evening, of a man who had finally, after 7 years in the dark, come home. The court assembled at dawn, not by invitation, by compulsion. The surge of power when the curse shattered had been felt by every wolf in the territory, a tremor running through the bond that linked alpha to pack, and every wolf knew something fundamental had changed. Valdren stood on the dais. Beside him, not behind, not below, stood Alessia, still barefoot, frostburns fading from her hands, a wolf behind her eyes that had not been there the day before. Sithara was there. She drew breath to speak. "Lady Sithara," Valdren said, and his voice carried the full, restored weight of an alpha whose wolf was whole at last. "You invoked the right of inquiry regarding the woman beside me. You questioned her bloodline, her rank, her right to stand in these halls. Cale stepped forward. He placed 2 items on the oak table before the assembly: a glass vial containing the oily residue of nightsbane, and a folded cloak embroidered with the Sathara household crest, taken from the poisoner's back by his guards 2 nights prior. The colour drained from Sethara's face. "She has no noble bloodline," Valdren continued. "She has no rank. She was a yarrow grinder's apprentice who came to this fortress with nothing but steady hands and more courage than every ranked wolf in this room combined." He turned to Sethara. "You tried to poison her. In my house. Under my protection. You sent a woman in the night with enough nightsbane to stop a wolf's heart. And you did it because a healer's apprentice frightened you more than any army ever has." "She is not worthy," Sethara began. "She broke a curse that was killing me. She did it by holding my hands while the cold tried to stop her heart. She did it with no magic, no bloodline, no weapon but the decision to stay when everything in this world told her to run." He looked at Sethara with eyes that no longer held frost. "What have you ever done, Lady Sethara, that compares?" Silence. "You are stripped of title and lands. You will leave this territory by nightfall, and you will carry with you the knowledge that the yarrow grinder you tried to destroy is the reason this kingdom still has a king." Sethara stood. She walked out of the great hall with her chin high and her hands trembling, and the doors closed behind her with a sound like a period at the end of a very long sentence. Valdren turned to Alessia. In front of the entire court, every wolf who had sneered and whispered and laughed, he took her frost-scarred hand and pressed it to his chest, over the place where the scar had been. The scar was gone. In its place, warmth. "This is my mate," he said. "This is your Luna, and she is the bravest soul I have ever known." He kissed her hand. The court bowed, not because they were commanded, because they understood. 3 months later, the gardens bloomed. Not the cultivated gardens of the inner courtyard, those had always been maintained. The wild gardens. The ones beyond the eastern wall that had been frozen solid for 7 years, where nothing grew and the soil cracked like old bone. Green shoots pushed through the thawed earth. Wildflowers, stubborn, improbable, vivid, opened their faces to the morning sun. Alessia stood at the window of the Luna's chambers, her chambers now, though she still caught herself reaching for the servants' door, and watched a gardener kneel beside a rosebush that had been dead wood for the better part of a decade. It was budding. Behind her, Valdren's arms circled her waist. His chin rested on her shoulder. His skin was warm, always warm now, unfailingly, wonderfully warm. And the sound of his breathing was the steadiest thing she knew. "A letter arrived this morning," he said, "from a village to the south, from a woman named Marin." Alessia stiffened. "She sends her congratulations to the Luna of the Northern Territories. She says she always knew you were destined for extraordinary things." A pause. "She also begs an audience. Apparently life in the village has grown somewhat difficult since word spread about what happened at the feast, about who pushed the healer's apprentice onto that dance floor, and why." Alessia was quiet for a long time. "Let her wait," she said. "I have yarrow to grind." He laughed. It was still a new sound, rough-edged, unpracticed, surprised out of him more often than offered deliberately. She collected each one like a precious stone. "You are extraordinary," he murmured against her hair. "I am a healer's apprentice who doesn't know the dance steps. You are the woman who walked into the cold and held on." He turned her gently to face him. "And I will spend every year I have left grateful that you did." She pressed her palm flat against his chest. Beneath her fingers, his heart beat. Steady, strong, warm. No frost, no ice, no curse. Just a man, finally alive, holding the woman who had saved him. She smiled. Outside in the wild garden, the rose bush bloomed. So, where are you listening from tonight? I would love to know. Drop it in the comments along with your thoughts on this story. Did any moment make you catch your breath? And if this one hit you the way it hit me, make sure you are subscribed so you never miss the next tale. I will see you in the next one.